Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Plus Local Support. I hope you're all doing well. You're doing good, guys?
All good?
Yeah.
All right, mate. Not too bad.
Cool. I know this is like day 3048 of lockdown or whatever it is, but
Yep.
yeah, there's only so much Office you can watch after a while, you know. What have you guys been up to?
Well, I've got a 5-week-old baby, so I've been busy, just changing nappies, being puked on, and not in the good way. And yeah, it's been. I mean, it's crazy for everyone, but with a newborn not being able to go anywhere, it's just tough.
Yeah.
So excuse the bags.
Fair enough. What about you, Carl?
I've just been writing, doing bits and bobs around the house, all the boring grown-up stuff. Yeah. But there may be a pop punk track on its way. I don't want to give it away, but just there's something happening.
Something brewing.
Whoa.
Something brewing. Yeah.
That sounds cool.
News.
And it's not a poo.
Isn't that? It's not baby nappies or any of that.
No.
It's all good.
That is a change of scenery for me to have something that isn't a poo to get excited about.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, today's episode is talking about
hashtag ban life.
Yeah. Dad life.
Dad life / or we're all trying to do dad life while still wanting to do ban life.
Yeah.
Yeah, today's episode is going to be all about band life and talking about the experiences we've had in bands and who we've played with and everything. So it should be really fun. Really looking forward to getting my teeth into this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be really cool. I mean, who wants to go first on?
Well, we did have a bit of an itinerary, which is good. And one of the first things that we were going to speak about, and I guess it's kind of important because between the three of us, we're all predominantly guitarists in the bands that we're actually in. And one of the first things we were going to discuss was around our first guitars.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I first guitars wise, I would imagine most of us probably all started out. I'm going to hazard a guess that we all started out probably on some kind of Strat copy.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately not.
What did you have, Steve?
So there, of course, I had the luxury of obviously my dad always had a guitar in the house. So my kind of first dabblings with a guitar was a Ibanez electroacoustic, like hard body.
Yeah.
I actually got my dad to send me a picture of it, and I'll upload it onto the group.
Yeah.
It is. Well, let's put it this way: it wasn't built for muting. It wasn't built for palm muting. It was not built for power chords. It was just this bass electroacoustic that I just powered with a gain up to 11 through my 15-watt Marshall amp for about a year, and just actually the first ever gig I did in terms of first ever performance on a stage. There was a school assembly, and I actually used that guitar, and it is. So we've watched the video back in countries.
Feedback like mad.
No, there was no feedback at all. The only way to describe it is it was like a foghorn. It was like, so it's like there was no real tone. It was just a noise.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I mean, the first guitar that I ever actually had that was physically mine was an Epiphone SG that I had for Christmas. We'd gone into Kempster's during the summer, and I was trying some guitars because obviously the minute I started playing guitar, the only place I wanted to go in town was Virgin and HMV, and then we had to go to Kempster's and Holmes's just so I could pretend that I could play all these guitars.
Mate, I was the same. I used to stalk those places. It was actually embarrassing, even to the point where I haven't been in Kempster's for quite a long time, but I went there to get some strings during lockdown. And sure enough, as I walked through there, Jeff's there, and he's like, "Hi, Carl," you know, in his little
yeah.
How do you
Well-
still remember me? I haven't been here for 15 years. But I was there. Anytime I went into town, and that's quite often,
Yeah.
I'd go in there and I wouldn't leave.
Yeah,
I'd be there
yeah.
for, like, 2
That's what
hours.
remembers you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean the thing is my dad knew Jeff because my dad
Yeah.
played in a band with a relative of Jeff. So
Okay.
Durham. He's known my name for far too long. So when I go
Yeah.
in there, actually the only time I go into Kempsters now is when I've bought a piece of shit off of Facebook and I go, Jeff, I've bought this absolute bargain. I take it in there, it's like hanging up. I'm like, it just needs a setup, right? And he's like, set up, complete rebuild. I'm like, no. Just a £45 setup and it'll be ready to go. And before you know it, you turn up and he's done the most amazing setup job on this guitar, and you just go, just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one
That-
place I've never ever gone there and got anything set up by him. So I need to do that more. I was trying to make a conscious effort a couple of years back to kind of buy a little bit more locally with equipment and stuff like that. So I have bought a few bits and bobs from there. I got like the Katana app, Boss Katana app. I bought from there.
Yeah.
And I bought this little tiny like kids Jackson
Mhm.
as well to get my daughter into it.
Oh.
She's not that interested. She prefers like Bones and I. I can't really get her into anything else at the moment. But yeah, I try, but then sometimes you just see these deals out there, don't you? You go onto Andertons or Gacken, and you just can't help it.
This is, I think, what the biggest problem is that for kind of pick strings, I can buy 50 picks for £7 on Amazon, or I can pay £1 each. I mean, Kempsters. I mean, if I'm in town and I need something, it's there, and it is that horrible thing of, I'm very conscious that if you don't support these businesses, they won't be there.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
To the prime example, and they're a totally different is kind of Toys R Us. They're especially Russ in Swindon.
Yeah.
It was a place that I remember going to as a kid. Every birthday and Christmas, I've got £7. Let's go to Toys R Us.
Well, you may or may not remember there being a guitar shop in town that was at the bottom of Vic Hill, where the Machine Mart shop is. Where there's like a tool store. There was it was actually pretty underrated because everyone was always going to Homes, always going to Kempsters.
Yeah.
And a couple of times I would go in there, and it wasn't a bad shop. But they had stuff in there that I guess there was no market in Swindon for. Like, for example, I remember they're having a 12 grand, like a Strat copy that was custom built, but it's like 12 grand.
Yeah,
no bugger's going to buy that, dude. Like, no
No.
one's going to buy it at
No.
all. But I'd love to know what happened to that place because it had some amazing stock, but you just, I think it probably closed around 2001, 2000 and stuff like that. But I probably,
Crazy.
of all the times I went to all the shops, I would go into that one hardly ever, just because it was a bit more intimidating.
Yeah.
I think actually the thing the thing that kind of Kempsters and Holmeses survive on is the support from the schools. I know that especially Kempsters, all the kind of string instruments that they have at the schools, they're all rented from Kempsters. So that's really, I mean, I don't know anybody. Every time I go in there, it's very much that kind of 150 to £300 of a guitar. And for me, I've reached the kind of level where if I'm going to buy a guitar that I'm going to use, I'm going to spend more money. Or if I'm going to buy a project, I'll buy it on Facebook. I mean, through the first lockdown, I bought 4 guitars. I bought this, right? This would be the first game. How much did I pay for this?
It's made of wood. It's a paddle, right?
It's called a Wesley.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And how much did I pay for this?
Okay. Okay. Did it come like that, or did you modify it to look like a paddle?
No. This is how it's come. It's
Okay.
had a very basic setup and a new set of strings.
Okay.
That is all it's had.
All right. I don't know the brand. I'm assuming I'm gonna say £89.
£89 would have been a steal.
Okay.
I said 100.
I paid £30 for it.
Oh, boy.
Well done.
Off of some woman on Facebook. She was like,
This panel doesn't work.
like, it was one of those, and I've done quite a lot of this through lockdown, where you go, yeah, I'll have it, and you turn up and you think, oh no, what have I bought? Like, when I did it, I bought I've also got another Epiphone SG that I bought. Just some guy on Facebook was like, he'd obviously done a house clearance or something. He obviously didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bit chipped, but it was a Korean Epiphone SG, which I don't know if you know, the Korean ones are actually the better build, so they're actually worth a lot more money. And I picked that for 80 quid. And he basically went, I don't really know what I'm doing with it. But I said it was just a cheap one. I'll give you 80 quid for it. Thanks very much. That's going to be my next kind of project. That's in the wardrobe at the moment. Going. I thought you were going to buy me to love me. Come on. I'm like, well, I've got enough to worry about at the moment. But yeah, it's my kind of relationship with guitars has changed over the years. For me, when I first, I was Gibson all the way through. I had a black Epiphone SG, then I bought a black Gibson SG, and for most of the Jeff Like Usual era, I played this black SG. It was the only thing I ever really played. I dabbled with a couple of other things, like I borrowed a 339 a couple of times, but at the time it just didn't give me that sound I wanted, and not interested in touching Fenders. It was only when we started doing like the weddings and I needed something that was a bit more versatile. But of course I went out and bought a Strat, didn't I? And yeah, basically completely contradicted everything I'd ever worked on. And it just gave me a totally different view. And from then I've had all sorts. Everything. It is actually during illness, they reckon, buying guitars on Facebook. It's been medically proven that it is a real illness, and I am struggling. So.
Oh, right. The first guitar I ever got.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on then, Stefan.
Sorry, I was going to say the first guitar I ever got was just a Stag that I ended up getting, and I think it's around £100 or so. So it's fairly decent, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just covered it in stickers and just the same riffs over and over again. And I would take it to college, and people that I went to college with, they were a hell of a lot better than what I had. Than what I was, and they could play all sorts of music and stuff. So it was pretty depressing taking it in just to be showing up every time. But you know, they would help me tune it and stuff like that, and give me pointers and whatnot. So yeah, I wish I still kept that, because there's something quite sentimental about, you know, your first guitar and keeping hold of it. And I ended up selling it a few years later for like Coheed and Cambria tickets.
Yeah,
which is ridiculous.
I've sold guitars I wish I never had. I had the yellow Tom DeLonge Strat, and I sold them young lad about 5 years ago, and I never should have sold it. I've actually got photos of it, and I've kept the serial number just in case I ever see another yellow one, because I'd love to somehow find it, and I would buy it back. But the people now want absolutely stupid money for them. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny with obviously doing the Blink band now. I've always wanted a Tom DeLonge Strat, and I've spent years. And to be honest, I should have bought one when they were like 600 quid.
Yeah,
because
they
actually
came out at $499. They were 499 quid when they came out, and now
I mean,
like
bargain.
Beautiful guitar as well.
Yes, well, some guys, the last two I've seen that have been on Reverb, were put up for $2,000 each.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking absolutely stupid. You know, it is mental, because it is just it's a Mexican built Fender. It's got a 76 headstock, which you could probably go and buy for a couple of £100 off of all parts. Go and buy yourself just a Strat body, copy body. Go and get yourself a Mother of Pearl scratch plate and a Seymour Dunker Invader. There you go. That's that guitar. That's all it is. And it's not $2,000 worth of stuff. You know, it just isn't. But it's the rarity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same as the 335 now. Even the Epiphone ones. In the middle of last year, there were a couple that popped up on Facebook, and I tried to get them cheaper than I really should have paid for it, and I lost out on them.
Yeah.
Like there was a guy on Facebook that was saying, "Oh, that my son's gone off to Australia and he's told me to sell his guitars," and he was like, "Do you know how much it's worth?" I was like, "I reckon it's worth about 200 quid, mate." Right? And he was like, "Oh, fine." And obviously other people have messaged him saying, no, it's worth like 500-600 quid. Now you try and get even one of the Epiphone ones, you try and get one of those, they're like 900 quid.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's the nature of the beast. It's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market right now.
Of course it is. Yeah.
And the thing is with guitars is they seem to get more valuable with like age and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things.
I've got a that's my Nesfig guitar. Is this one?
Nice. I should have brought mine downstairs.
Stand up, seagull. Stand up. This one. That's the Nesfig guitar.
Nice.
That's,
nice.
That's Les Paul Custom. So special. Got that from World Guitars, which is out by Stonehouse, just Stroud sort of way.
Yeah.
And that place, oh my lord, that place is amazing. Like you almost feel embarrassed going in there because they pretty much don't have anything under the thousands at all there.
Yeah.
And so you go in there and you kind of feel like you're either going to waste their time, so you feel more like obliged to buy stuff when you're there. But yeah, they got some lovely stuff there. I definitely want to go back there and have a little mooch about.
It was that yellow fence you played in Kick Out, wasn't it? I can always remember you playing that yellow.
Yeah, I got that. I had to say I wasn't working at the time. I couldn't really afford it, so I traded in a Marshall DSL head that I had. Just because I couldn't, I didn't have the 500 quid. It's so funny now. Like I can now have all the equipment I wanted back then, but now I don't need it. So,
yeah.
You know, there's loads of stuff I wanted back then. Actually, a couple of purchases that I did do that I then sent back. They say never meet your heroes, but I always wanted an Ibanez Gem, the white one that Steve Vai had that you probably. I always wanted that, and I bought one, and then I got it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I noticed like 5 things that were wrong with it. And because I spent so much money on it, it sort of left a bitter taste in my mouth. So I ended up sending it back to the shop going, not being funny, there's like 2 really bad paint imperfections on this guitar. The mother of pearl tree, like the vine inlay that went up the neck, actually some of it have actually fallen out and wasn't there. When you actually looked, I was like, and then once I did that, I thought, hang on a sec, I just spent a fortune on this thing. And there's literally it's secondhand. What the fuck?
Yeah.
So I sent it back, and I've never bought another one to replace it. But I was like, no, that was kind of like a stupid purchase. But yeah, but I'm definitely
this is the thing with guitars. I think there's so much now. When we were kind of 18, 19, 80% of your sound was the guitar you bought. If you had an okay amp but a decent guitar, you could get away with it. It's totally the other way around now. I think you can buy a £150 guitar and put it for a decent processor, and actually it's completely different. Yeah. I mean, there's videos online where they put like £150 Strat up against like a 15 grand Strat, and they're like, is there that much a difference? For me, to that side of tweaking your amp and getting like exactly what you want, it's not really my thing. It never has been. I'm much more of a player than a tweaker. So for me, as long as it plays well and it feels good, I'm not. I mean, I'd never spend anything. I now would never spend anything over kind of 500-600 quid on the guitar because I just don't think I need to. And even the kind of wedding stuff, like the Strat I used was like 500-600 quid, and it was perfect. I'd have been silly spending any more money. Our good friend Danny Yates spends insane amounts on these Manson guitars.
He's got shares in them, I swear. He's got shares in Manson.
he should have shares in them for the amount of money he spent on their guitar. But I mean, dare I've played them. I mean, do you know what's really, really weird? He bought the Court version of the same guitar.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
it's nicer than any of the other ones. It's so weird. I was like, this actually feels like it is. It's weird. I just don't. But it's personal preference, isn't it? I mean, for him, he absolutely loves them. Like, and he loves the. But the minute I picked the Cort one up, I was like, this one feels. Dara, to me, it feels nicer than any of the really expensive custom job ones you've got. He's like, you're having a laugh, aren't you? I was like, is it Dara's personal preference? I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, other than that, my first guitar was just I had a Strat copy, which was a Westfield, like Strat
strong
copy, all natural wood, but really highly glossed natural wood. So it had like a real thick lacquer on it. It just, all single coil. I used that for about 1.5 years, and then my friend Tim, who was to me was like a guitar god because he could actually properly play. He sold me an old Washburn Mercury series with a humbucker, single humbucker with a Floyd Rose, and it was all really excited. It had 24 frets, and it was like, and I was like, I had that, used that for the most amount of time. Then I switched to Jacksons. I had Jacksons for a little while, and then it was the Tom DeLonge Strat. But since then, I had a SG Standard, sold that. Had a Les Paul Gold Top, sold that. Had a Telecaster, the Baja one, which was absolutely beautiful. I wish I never sold the Baja one, but I had that, sold that. So I'm not overly precious, I think, about guitars, but I am at a point now where I think I'm going to keep what I've got, and I have literally just bought another guitar.
Nice.
Which will be coming before my 40th birthday. So and it's never special. It's never a Les Paul special, but it's a black one with just one bridge pickup, and it's got like the red tortoiseshell. It's just sexy. I like it. I'll send a picture. We can throw a picture of it.
Yeah.
When that one comes back in, when it's back in stock, it will be sent over to me. But other than that, that's about it. One of the things. How did any of you guys like meet, like your band members and stuff, like the other people you're in a band with, like? Steve.
So me and Chris have been best friends since we were kind of toddlers. We went to we started school together, really. So we've always kind of and it was together. We kind of started. We got into kind of Blink and Green Day, and we'd start to listen to songs, and that's where the kind of what should we try and learn these songs, and kind of it went from there. So basically throughout my whole kind of musical career, it's been me and Chris. My younger brother then obviously copied everything I did. Still to this
I'll
day.
Ask you how you met him.
Well, yeah. I mean, he kind of there was a guitarist and kind of had a guitar, and kind of that's what he wanted him to do. And it took me a while. He and my mum, they lived in Bracknell for quite a while, so we were quite away from each other. When he kind of discovered music, and when he was pretending to be a drummer at one point, do we all go through the phase? Yeah, I can play drums, I can play all the small things. There's actually he did a Stars in Your Eyes concert where he played drums to all the small things. Didn't even shave his head or nothing, or have tattoos. Rubbish.
No, rubbish.
But yeah, and I'd kind of. I could see that he was the person to bring into play bass. Like he just had him and Chris are very, very similar. Even to this day, they're very musically gifted in terms of they can all tune by ear. If you put a track on, they can work that track out within 30 seconds of the chords. Like that they've just got that kind of ability, that kind of almost the theory side of it to be able to pick it up.
Yeah.
Where I'm much more everybody look at me, I'm playing this chord, this chord, I've learned this chord, this is the one I've learned. And I fought with Chris for a few years, because obviously being brothers, having brothers together in a band doesn't always work, The Oasis is the perfect example of one who's very technically gifted and one that's really arrogant and wants to be the star. I'll let you work out which one's which. But
I can play this chord.
After a couple of years, and Chris, I think just basically gave and said, okay, we'll get together with Dave, and it was pretty much from there the three of us kind of grew.
You had a lot of chemistry.
Yeah, we've been together a long time. I mean, obviously, me and Dave being brothers, and me and Chris being effectively brothers from different mothers. It was definitely a bond. And actually, James, the drummer, was actually because Chris went to I don't know if any of you remember the thing called Rock School, where it was basically like you'd get together.
With Jack Black.
No, but there was a thing in Swindon where you could go and be a musician. So it was run by a guy called Stuart Rowe, who's quite a famous guy in Swindon, and there in the music scene. He they basically, you turn up as a musician and they put you into bands and they'd kind of get you to it was all about growing as musicians. Durham and Chris used to go to that once a week, and they do like a concert at the end of the year to that kind of thing. And that's where I met James Durham, who straight away, Chris, like, I've got this drummer, he'd be perfect for what we want to do. He's a nice guy. And I'll never forget the first practice we ever had. We used to practice during Chris's bedroom. So Chris lives in quite a big house, Wooden Basset on Stonover Lane, and basically we cram like all the amps, drum kit into this bedroom, and we just play for like 3-4 hours. I mean, there are points we're all in our pants because it was so hot in that room, like.
Yeah,
just to keep the listeners listening on Valentine's Day, you know. It was, and that was kind of the forming of us as a four, really. I don't know, it was kind of hot, sweaty, everybody in their pants afternoons at Chris's.
That's hot.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So how did you meet your guys, man?
Well, I was in a load of bands that didn't really get anywhere, and I mean, my other band weren't really around for that long. I mean, the last band I was in is probably the best band to talk about, I suppose. I was playing in a sort of indie band to start with my friend Chris, and we played. We didn't play any shows with them, but we were practicing with them a lot. And Chris was into like the same sort of stuff as me, and you know, sort of pop punk sort of thing, and we wanted to go that kind of way. So I just decided, like, do you want to start another band? Like, we can still do this indie stuff, and we'll start another band. So we did. We wrote a few songs, and then we got my friends Tom, and then we got the bass player from like a website called findmeaband or something.com or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is basically the equivalent of like Tinder for meeting bandmates.
Yeah.
Post an ad on there, and then hopefully you get a reply from someone. It's really good because within literally like a week, someone had replied to my message, and he was perfect. Craig, his name was, and he was great. We clicked straight away, and we formed in like 2014, and we were around, you know, just the local scene until about 2017. So, you know, we had a short span career, but I mean, if I was thinking about this earlier, I was like, if I was doing this podcast of my own, it would probably be called The Local Support of the Local Support, you know. Never really got to play with anyone, you know, any signed bands or whatever, or anything like that. Like, I know you played with Zebrahead, didn't you, Steve, one time? That was awesome.
We were very lucky. We had a year where basically we became the Plus Local Support.
Yeah.
For anybody that was touring, we seemed to just be pushed in a lineup. And you may think that's brilliant, but some of the bands just weren't the same genre as us, and it was because I think that we've discussed before, kind of like what is pop punk and what they're essentially. Jeff Usual were not a pop punk band.
No, not really.
They were a pop rock band, but because of the kind of the stereotypical kind of push together of that kind of genre that we were put on with bands. I mean, we played with bands like Derrido, Wilhelm Scream, Army of Freshmen.
Really good, yeah.
Wheatus,
Okay.
Furthest Drive Home, the Blitz Kids,
Yeah.
their Attack.
Nice.
Did you support Eternal Lord at the Furnace?
Ironically, we didn't, but it wouldn't have surprised me if we'd have been thrown on that bill as well.
I remember, I think that I saw you once at the Furnace, and the band was literally just like a proper like deathcore, like ooh, like that. And
possibly, if it would have been, it doesn't ring a bell, but it's no surprise to me that we would have been put on with somebody who, but that I think is a plus and a minus of a local music scene. Area 51. yeah. Area 51, the venue that we all kind of grew up with initially, was very much. There, I swear the promoters went you and you. You know, those names look right together, regardless of hearing what you were like. I mean, our first gig, we were on with a band called Mibe. Does anybody remember the band Mibe? Yeah. So we supported Mibe and Route 215, and Route 215 is what I can only describe as Thin Lizzy in drain pipes.
Nice.
Like it was like they were like kind of classic rock, but dressed like scene kids. And then we rock up. Do we rock up talking about, you know, girls and breaking hearts, and all of a sudden but it was just a brilliant mix of bands. And I think one of my favorite things that we used to do is there used to be like a battle of the bands, and I think that's such a I don't know if it's something that happens anymore, like the battle of the bands, where you get like 6 bands that are totally different, and just kind of they just get thrown together in this night. I remember we did there were battle of the bands at Area, and it was Pre-Infection, who were obviously very different to us. Then there was like a couple of acoustic acts, us, and then another band that were nothing like us. There's a band called Killian's Red. They're who were like a metal band, like a Kill Switch kind of style band, and it was just the most bizarre night. There was just so many different genres thrown onto the one stage, good and bad. I think because I think actually, the older I get, I'd almost prefer to go and watch like 4 or 5 different bands. Like when you go and watch a big band now, 9 times out of 10 the support bands are very similar. Where actually I find that actually if you threw like a slightly different band on, it would be a totally different dynamic. But yeah, that's just my opinion, I think.
How did you meet the Kick Out guys, Carl? I know you were friends, weren't you, with them for quite a long time?
Yeah, so I guess, well, even before then, the first sort of bands I was in a band with a couple of guys who I used to do like drama-y stuff with. And then after that, once I was old enough to actually go out and drink,
14, you mean?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, there was one time I actually got snuck into level 3 when I was 15 years old, which is a miracle due to the fact that I look as young as I do, and I still do. You know, it'll be it's my for those who don't know, it will be my 40th birthday next month.
Oh wow!
So you know, being 15 and being properly baby-faced and just looking, you know, pre-pubescent at 15, getting into level 3 at the time was, I don't know how we managed it, but it was a lot of lying and a lot of older people who were old enough vouching for me, saying that I was like a cousin who had traveled down. Anyway, so one of the bands that we were in was a band called the Dinner Ladies. And the Dinner Ladies was formed in 2 weeks. So this is pre any MySpace, any social media. I think the only thing that existed at the time was the Vic had a forum. There was no broadband. It was all still all dial up. And so this story is an interesting one because I can't imagine it happening today. But what happened was I met Mark Thatcher and a kiddie I went to school with, Ian James. We were out. We started hanging out with each other. We got very, very, very drunk, and then we started kind of making up a band that evening. Like, wouldn't it be funny if? And then we were in this band called the Dinner Ladies, and we just did punk versions of pop songs, and we wore tabards and dressed like dinner ladies, and just made up these absolutely ludicrous, ridiculous songs, and we were like, hey, yeah, that would be funny. And before like the night was finished, we were all meeting up round our friend Dave's house to start this band the following day. So the following day, we're all like, hungover, and like, why have we decided to do this? But we've got all of our equipment. We've all packed it into Dave's mum's dining room, or Ian's mum's. It was one of their dining rooms, and just started to like write songs right there and then. And we wrote a song called the Blair Ship Project, and we covered When Two Become One by the Spice Girls, and just stupid stuff. It was all terrible. We weren't really even playing it very well, and we were like, let's get a gig, and we got a gig within 2 weeks, and no one wanted to put us on, and the only place that would actually allow us to play was the George on Escott Hill, which
remember it.
So we played the George. The George was absolutely rammed. Nobody bothered to go to the Vic that night because it was free. We were the only band on. We rushed through whatever songs we had in about 20 minutes because I think just adrenaline. We were like, so we just smashed through it. I remember someone crowd surfing and going flying over the bar into the bar staff. And then after that, when they found out we had kind of drummed up this interest, then it was like, oh yeah, sure, you can come and play the Vic. And then yet again, same thing, Vic absolutely rammed just for us idiots, basically. And then we somehow managed to get the level 3 packed. Like, we headlined level 3 as this band that had only done a couple of shows, that had formed in like 2 weeks with these awful songs. But this is one thing I think is quite I don't know if it's unique to Swindon or not, but there were some bands at the time that were really very good, and they were musically very good. Their songs were really good. They're all very talented, great singers, great guitarists. Yet they would do a show and then no one would come, and then there was us idiots, couldn't play, literally getting 450 people into level 3 to see us. And we're just there going,
because you were a fun live band.
Well, this is the thing. That's exactly it. People will go and see things that's going to make them laugh.
Entertainment, yeah.
I think also it's a popularity thing. I think definitely it's one of the Jeff usual things that Durham area, it was easy to get, because it was easy to get a crowd because they won't come to see you anyway. They would just come into underage drink. That was ideal. But the minute you tried to go anywhere else, it was tough to pull a crowd. I mean, I
get found out.
I remember the days of kind of the Riffs bar gigs, like when you were like 17, 18.
You had to make an pull
like, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I never went to Riffs to watch a gig. Ever in my life. I've never been to Riffs to watch a gig, but I've played at Riffs. But because it's so far out, for me, it was like, I mean, even with Chris living in, it's there from Chris' house in Bassett, it was like a 15-minute walk. It wasn't actually that far. Still, we never went there, only when we played. Because it was just like Darren, I think the age group that we were pushing our music at area weren't old enough to go to the Vic.
No.
Our second ever gig was at the Vic. We supported a this would be a blast in the past minute, a band called the Flame Grilled Chinchillas.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
I remember those. I remember that name.
Yeah, they were very much kind of like a
ska.
I want to say almost like they weren't initially. They were quite kind of oi oi, I would say, initially, kind of like.
Oh, I must be thinking of someone.
They did as they came on a bit. They did become a bit more ska.
Oh,
Do they change their drummer? And the next time I saw them a few years later, they were a bit more ska for sure.
Probably.
But yeah, so many. There in terms of local gigs, do you look back and you talk about the George? I remember one of the worst experiences of my whole life was we'd got a gig in a place called the Broadwalk, which was at the bottom of town.
Dude, yeah, I played that. Yeah.
And I think it was like a Wednesday night or something. And we were playing.
Actually.
Well, we were playing with the Paper Trail, who was another old band of yours. And yeah, we would kind of. It was basically a night that had been put on by a promoter that had obviously told the owner this would be great for business midweek. And it was when we were kind of we bought a PA, so we'd gone out. We thought, you know what? No one we know's got a PA. We're all working. Let's put some money together. Let's go and buy a cheap PA. So we did. They went to Sound Control in Birmingham, and we bought this PA. We thought we were the nuts. The absolute we've got a 300-watt PA. We're absolutely living the. Of course, we're going to get gigs now. You know, and during the benefit of that meant that people booked us because we had a PA. And at the time, we were like, this is great. You look back now and you think, we were just being fucking used. Brilliant. But yeah, it was quite funny because then basically I was pretending I knew what I was doing, kind of mixing something. And I pressed a button and just the feedback that came out of this fucking speakers was like, I mean, the whole place was just, do you know that one button, you press it and it isn't like a guitar feedback. It's like a, you're like,
boom.
Yeah, almost like a sonic boom. And I remember that happening, and like the 6 people that obviously come in for a beer after work instantly fucked off. Like it was like, and I remember like the owner looking at me like, "Thanks for clearing the room." Yeah. Right, and then obviously we started playing and completely cleared the whole road because it was where they used to open all the doors, and the thing was, so if we open all the doors, there'll be live music. Passers-by will come in. They don't want to hear this shit, you know, like
not the bottom of town. You're not their
fucking goths playing fucking Green Day covers. You fuck's sake. Yeah, and it was one of those, and I'll never forget that kind of experience of looking around, going, "Shit, I'm well underqualified to be touching this equipment." But yeah, I think local gigs is it's
nothing quite like.
No, there's 2 types of gigs, I think, and it is, I think, what I used to hate is this idea that it's your gig, it's your responsibility to bring people.
Yeah,
like
promoters, don't they? They make you bring like a certain amount of people, otherwise they won't have you on again.
Well, I mean, I've got a bit of a problem with the word promoter because I believe the term promoter,
the definition
of the word means that it's your job to promote the gig.
Yeah.
Not put a post on MySpace and then a poster in your local post office. That's not promoting a gig.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that was definitely one of the things early on that used to drive me mad. I'd be like, well, do you and we'll go on to Darren a bit to talk about our out of town experiences out of town, but wherever you went outside town, it's like, well, how many people can you bring? And I was like, well, we don't want to bring people from Swindon because we've got promoters in Swindon that want us to bring people to Swindon, you know, like surely the idea of us coming to your town is that you're putting on an outside offering for your fans to come and watch.
Yeah. No, that's a very real thing, and I would imagine it's much easier now. Obviously, you've got social media; it must help to a degree.
Yeah.
But, again, but way back when I were a lad.
I've also got a great story about a modern day marketing of a gig, and two, but you carry on. We'll get there a bit further on.
Well, it's just that I think we had promoters that worked in this town, and we had some that didn't. You know, like Yankee Boy always made an effort, and there was always, I think, just generally just because the posters were always up there. You walk past the venue, you could always see what bands were on and stuff like that, and you know, they were all fair to middling bands and stuff like that. So you always sort of got people through the door. But we started to make friends with a lot of the bands we supported, and eventually they would offer us shows with them. You know, come down to Portsmouth, come to Southampton and support us and stuff like that. And one particular place we were playing above some pub that had a music hall above it, and we got there, and you know, we sound checked, and then we're sort of looking outside, and there's no one outside, no one at all. And then the doors finally opened, and no one comes in. And then it was at that point they sort of went to the promoter, like, you know, where is everybody? And have you done anything? And he's like, no. And they were like, but we've all come from, you know, like Swindon and other places along. That was when we supported Pickle Dick, and I can't remember who the other band were, but they were, you know, they were reputable, and they pulled a crowd, but they were just like, where is anything? And yet, like you say, so much emphasis put on the bands to try and bring people in. It's like, but we're coming. No one from Swindon, if our friends is going to travel down to Portsmouth, I'm afraid they're just not going to do it on a.
This whole idea is of these bands that will book a minibus to take. I mean, I would never book a minibus for my friends to come and see me 2 hours away.
No.
What is the point of that?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I do.
London gigs, but other than that, like, no, come a lot. Like, yeah.
There are, for me, our first experience of a London gig. We were very lucky. What's the place called? I've seen Enter Shikari do a gig there recently. I will come back and I will find out what that venue's called. Basically, it's quite a famous venue in London, like a pub.
What part of London? What part of London? Do you remember at all?
They're not sure.
Okay.
Well, I'll Google it in a bit. But my favourite memories is it was amazing. We're playing in London.
Yeah, that's a dream.
Like at the time, we were like, it's amazing. Like we're playing in London. We've made it. You know, like this is a real big step. And we went up with a band called. I can't remember what the band were called. This is really bad. This was bad. What was about? It was another Swindon band. We went up with them. I mean, basically, I pulled my car up outside, and we went in to kind of check. And by the time I came up, my car was on a ramp, being kind of towed away.
Amazing.
Like, and I was like, okay, welcome to London. Like, it was the Hope. I remember it was the Hope and Anchor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I can't remember the band it was went up with, but yeah, and they basically that was a quick realism. It was like, oh, okay, right, where are we going to park the car? Because that's one thing you don't realize when you're parked outside area in their massive car park. You're like, and actually, my favorite experience of going out of Swindon with a gig was we played a venue called the Croft in Bristol, and it was one of the weirdest scenarios. We were on first, and it was coming up to the door time, and they were like, right, everyone get on stage, you're ready to go. And we started before they opened the doors. So it was as if, like, as they were coming in and going to the bar to get their first drink, we were warming the PA up effectively. Yeah. And it just always sticks in my mind of this kind of, what do you mean you want us to start? There's an empty room? And he'd be like, and you could hear there were people in like the front bar, but it's like, yeah, what we do here is that you start playing and then we open the doors.
It's mental.
I was like, hey? And then, at this point, we had like a 3-minute intro with like synth and stuff. It was like a real big build up, and it was like the perfect kind of walk into our first song.
Yeah.
And as that's happening, as that's happening, people are like, people are ordering from the bar. People are like getting stamped as they come in. Like it was just.
You're rushing into.
I remember looking. Yeah, I remember looking around, going, "This is the weirdest experience I've ever had." Like it was just an odd Durham scenario.
Yeah, you
But,
guys are lucky enough to play out of town. I mean, my band really never got as far as that. So you know,
if I'm honest with you, I'm not sure it's a blessing. Like I don't think we ever had an experience going out of Swindon that was a positive.
I think that's it though. I think you know how bands, they go out further, and like some bands that try and break the US, they're like, oh, it's impossible, you can't do it, it's completely different. It's a bit just like that. It's like there's steps along the way to being successful, and I think you know, your experience is just about getting over that. You know, like there's bound to be some, like, you know, bumps along the way. Unfortunately, not everybody makes it. And
I mean, for us, the biggest thing is like, it was that MySpace generation. If you'd go on to like bands, the same code, and they'd have like 25 dates on from there, and you'd go, how are they getting these dates? We are emo. We used to do this thing, right, where we'd go to this was when me and David lived in our first flat together when we were like 16, 17, 18. So we never had any internet. So we'd go to the library, right? And I remember that me, James, and Dave would whenever we could, we'd be in the library emailing promoters saying that we'd like to. I mean, that we used to spend hours doing it. Yeah, and it was so hard. And you'd look at these bands that had like 40 dates, and you'd go, how the hell are you doing this? And I don't think
now you know why bands have managers, you know, like they have managers to take.
Yeah, for sure. But at the kind of local band level, how do you do that? And when I think also at that level, but at that level, your dream is to go and tour and do this. And actually, in reality, the idea of going and doing a tour and the reality of going and doing a tour are two very different things. Like, we were quite lucky that we were quite well financially backed ourselves, in terms of we always spent the right money on gear, that we'd hired vans, you know, we had the financial backing to do it. I mean, we talked about like at one point we were talking about doing a tour, and we were kind of setting out kind of towns we'd like to visit, and kind of plan the planning process that we went through. Like, this is where we can stay, we know we can get a cheap room here, like everything up to actually getting an actual gig in that town. Like, it was so difficult. And even do you try and pal up with other bands? Do we used to do this thing where we say, oh, we'll get you a gig in Swindon if you can get us a gig in your town? 2 or 3 times that we did it, where that we'd get someone a gig, they'd play, and you'd never hear from them again. It was like so weird. Like, even like literally like we did a lot with this band called Cold Morning Colours, who were a phenomenal band at the time. They were from Bath, and to the times we managed to get them onto a bill with us and stuff, never did they ever repay the favor.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like at the time it's like, well, right, I'm sure they're trying. Now you've only sit back and you go, they weren't bothered, you know. They weren't interested in getting a gig. They were all for what they wanted. It was fair play, you know. That's what it was all about at the time. But that naivety of being a young band, and you know, they're not really knowing. So we spent 50 quid, and I don't know if anybody remembers. There was a musicians union. There was a like a book called The Unsigned Guide.
Yeah.
And I think we spent like 50 quid on this book, and it had like 2,000 venues, 2,000 promoters, like what to do. And we used to take this book to the library, and we'd email all these promoters, email all these venues, and you'd get no replies. And it was just so disheartening. I think the last gig that Jeff Like Usual ever did as an originals band was at a place in Kidderminster. I mean, we did miles away, and we played this gig, and we played really well. There was nobody there. It's like 4 or 5 people in the dog. I mean, you know it's bad when the sound man leaves when you're playing. Like that's how bad. And when you get to the stage where you go, this is a real slug. Like, everyone's working full time. We're driving to Kidderminster for like you're back at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's cost you money. No one's seen what you do. You know, you've broken the guitar strings. It's actually cost you money to go. You get back and then you put on MySpace, sick gig tonight, guys.
Yeah, that's what the title of the bulletin reads, and then you click on it, and it's like,
yeah,
if only.
Yeah.
It is a tough industry at any level, but I mean, there's a low. Yeah, and we never did crack that kind of. Although we were very lucky to play with the bands that we played with in a local town, we were trusted by some good promoters. We had a really good understanding with Tim Yankee Boy. Like, we got the Zebrahead gig, Army of Freshmen, the Wilhelm Scream. I think it was kind of that thing of Derry knew that we weren't going to let him down. We were going to be professional, you know. Because I think that's half the thing, and I think by moving into kind of the wedding scene, wedding plans and stuff like that recommend you, not because you're any good, because they know that you're going to be accommodating.
Yeah.
So when you're going to be, because whichever level you're at, they're essentially you are a you're putting on a show even if it's how you talk to the other bands and stuff. You're putting on that they're a persona that you're the right people for the job. And I think even from kind of that level of, I remember sitting in the furnace and one of the guys from Zebrahead flicking elastic bands at us and us flicking them back, you know, like it's kind of to that building that rapport with those kind of people definitely allowed us to kind of have that kind of thing. And I mean, do you look at the bands we played and you think, do you had quite a successful career in terms of that kind of local scene? What it doesn't mention is that most of those were in the same venue put on by the same promoter.
No one needs to know about that. It just that's not fun, is it? But yeah, I think when I was playing, it was because we had started playing shows when I was like 30, so just a few years ago. It was a completely different mentality to when you first start playing when you're 20, because you know, kind of by then that, you know, okay, this is going to be something that we're going to do as like a hobby. We're going to play local shows. We're going to entertain a few friends and family. We're going to record a few songs. We might make an EP or a music video. And this is it. We're just going to have fun with it. And I was so happy with just that, because it meant the pressure was off.
Absolutely.
We could be ourselves. We could write the music that we liked. And even if people didn't like it, like, it didn't really matter, because it wasn't going like far out. That was never any, I mean, and we were at the age where, you know, with relationships, and I don't think anyone in the band had a kid at the time. So, you know, that wasn't the thing, but you know, it could have happened along, you know, in due course. But I look back, my old band, A Place to Call Home, was like the best band I've been in. It sounds ridiculous because we were nowhere near even the levels that you guys were, but the enjoyment we got out of it, and I think that's what it's all about, really, you know, like enjoying it and enjoying playing shows and enjoying recording.
That's definitely what it should be about.
Yeah, that's right. Because when you start playing, like, when you're younger, you can't help but have like aspirations to go on, I want to go on a tour and like sign to a major label and like
absolutely
job and stuff like that. But no, I mean, this time, you know, I was approaching 30. I was like, I was steady at my job where I was. This was just something that I was doing, and I was fine with it. And to be honest, I can't really wait until this lockdown finishes, because I kind of want to do something similar again.
Yeah, I mean, as you talk about kind of it's all about enjoyment. That was probably the one thing that destroyed Jeff Lee Hughes as a band, is that we focused. Yeah, we focused far too much on what wasn't important. All the chords has got to be absolutely spot on, you know.
Yeah.
And we focused far too much on spending hour after hour running through sections and songs to get it right, you know. And you know what, I don't regret it, because at the end of the day, I think it stood us in good stead to move into to the next stage of our kind of musical careers.
Yeah.
But in terms of, it's only now you look back and go, wow, we had some amazing experiences. If only we'd have appreciated it at the time, like supporting a band like Zebrahead. They're not the biggest band, but as a local band, getting that gig in a local town is massive. Like,
say that, I mean, they've toured all over the world. You know, they've released several albums. I mean, yeah, you know, they're a big band to support.
They were well established at the time, certainly. Weren't they?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, music videos in the Playboy Mansion, for crying out loud. That was pretty big time, you know.
But and actually, the other band that supported them that day, that were the tour support, were a band called Dopamine, who
I remember them. They were good.
It was a guy called Neil Starr, who is the guy that then started Attack Attack, not the screamo Attack, the Welsh Attack.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Dopamine. They've got an album called Experiments with the Truth, which still to this day is one of my favorite records of all time.
Yeah, they're miles away from like what Zebrahead. Completely different genre, aren't they? Really, but
it's another example of I just put someone on a bill.
Yeah.
Or I mean, with Jeff, like usually anything like Zebrahead, we had an acoustic track. We used to play an acoustic track in our set. You know, like it was crazy. But we were never going to turn the opportunity down. That is for sure.
Of course not. Of course you wouldn't. Who did you get to play with, Carl?
At the time, we were playing with a lot of the bands that were a lot of ska bands, mainly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ska bands. So, like one of our, they sort of became our kind of like our closest friends that we used to gig share all the time, and that was Whitmore.
Oh, Whitmore!
Whitmore.
My God! Sorry.
So
many memories flooding back.
Yeah, and like those guys were just our mates. So even when we weren't gigging, we'd go over to each other's houses and stuff and drink and have fun and stuff. So
where were they from?
Amesbury.
Just
outside of Salisbury.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know where they are now. I think Rob's still around that sort of area.
It'd be great to have one of those guys on here one day, just to try and read some of those days.
Yeah, well, but we played quite a few shows with those guys. But we used to always play with a lot of ska bands. We weren't really ska. Fanny Mallet, when they were doing some of the early stuff, had kind of scarry sort of tones to it. I think there's a lot of upstrokes, you know, on the guitar chords and stuff like that. But we was still more like punky. But we played with Link 80. We did a couple of shows with those guys. But we played with all sorts of bands, lots of metal bands. I tried to ask the guys about some of the people we played with and stuff, and we played with Mybe as well and Brat, which is really weird because
Four Foot Fingers.
Did
you play
with Fingers? Yeah, I'm Felix. We definitely played with 4 Foot Fingers. A lot of those bands that were around on Golf and
Adequate 7. Yeah.
Probably, but the thing is, most of us don't remember. I've asked when I was in Once and For All as well, which was the more emo band. I asked Neil Kingsbury, and I asked Jam, and I asked Jono, and I've asked Gaz, and I've asked Marky, and I've asked them all, like, what bands did we play with? And we can't remember. It was so long ago, but we don't remember. Like, I was convinced that at one point we had supported Funeral for a Friend.
Could well have been. They played the Vic. Yeah, they played.
They did play the Vic. Yeah. We saw them. Neil confirmed it. He said, "Yeah." He goes, "No, we didn't support them, but we watched them." And if I'm right, Funeral for a Friend weren't even the headliners. They were like the second band on with 2 bands on after them. And there was a lot of that because it was like Bowling for Soup played. Bowling for Soup played the Vic as well. We didn't get that. We didn't get that show.
Awesome.
But that was Bowling for Soup just after they released.
Before they played the Oasis.
And before they blew up, before they became this huge band, you know, like, because for anyone who doesn't know, the Vic is a venue that at the time held around maybe 100 people, and you'd be packed in like sardines. So it wasn't a particularly big venue, but they used to get as I say, Funeral for a Friend and stuff like that. And I'd seen some sort of like big hardcore bands from New York and stuff that my friend Ben had put on. It's a band called 25 to Life. They were really good. But we've played with the US Bombs. We supported the UK Subs a couple of times. But the last, actually our very last show that we did as Kick Out was supporting Long Beach Short Bus with ex-members of Sublime. That was our last show.
I had no idea.
It was our last show, because the show, we had this amazing, talking about out of town shows, we had an incredible out of town show the show before that. It was back to back, it's like Thursday and Friday night. Thursday night we were playing at the Gloucester Guildhall, to packed out Gloucester Guildhall. That venue, it might be 1,000 people maybe. And
it's a bit more than 1,000, I would say. Couple of thousand at Guildhall.
It's a huge place. And we got there, and a complete eclectic mix of acts. I think there was an act on after us, and they were like a hip hop act. And I can't even remember what it was. It was like some kind of like a festival, like an all-day music festival. And we were second to last or something like that. And it was the greatest show I felt like we had done, because the sound was amazing. So it was, probably like had a huge 60 channel desk or whatever, like, and a proper like backline, and it was just phenomenal. It sounded great. Come off that stage buzzing, and then the next day I was still buzzing, and then we had that the gig with supporting Long Beach, and I think that it was the juxtaposition of the two shows, of having this amazing show to then having something that wasn't that great. And then once that was done, we were just like, oh, and then the band just kind of broke up. And that's it. I can't really think of too many other bands that we played with. Like, one thing I would say that was really important for us was gig sharing. Back then there was no room for like band rivalries. I don't know if it changed later on, but certainly around that time, because it was like us, British Beef, Buzztone,
classic.
Yeah, and who were kind of doing that sort of punky thing. There was no room for us to be enemies, even though we were quite similar in that sense, like genre-wise. So between the three of us, we would get gigs and then bring each one of us along, depending. So occasionally there'd be a show in Bath, and Buzztone would have got the show, and then they were like, do you guys want to support? And be like, yeah. Or we'd get a show somewhere and say, do you want to come and support? And yeah. And similar thing with British Beef, we did that as well. And yeah, and Two Sick Monkeys similarly. And we
everyone's played with the Two Sick Monkeys.
Yeah, well, you're not anyone if you haven't. They've been around for a while.
I haven't.
Every festival we ever played, you turned up, it was like Two Sick Monkeys are on first. It's like, okay.
And like we love playing with those guys, and it's okay. Most of us we've all disbanded and stuff like that, and pretty much all of that came to an end around 2002. And then in 2003 is when I did the emo band with Once and For All.
You were one of the first emo bands to sort of emerge out of Swindon, I would say.
We were
definitely.
We were quite early doors in the sense, but this is something I wanted to bring up before, was because the kids who like the music. So what we noticed, that was around 1999, all the kids that used to go to the Furnace in Level 3, they started out as kind of ska kids. They listened to ska music. They're all into ska. Then they became like the pop punk kids, and then they became the emo kids, and then they became the hardcore kids.
Yeah.
And it was the same kids, but they evolved with the music, and that's kind of like how the music scene went.
Yeah, it's interesting.
At the time, and a lot of bands did it too. A lot of bands sort of kind of changed their tone slightly.
Yeah.
But we just kind of like disbanded and joined other bands and stuff like that. And Once For All was pretty much more like an emo band. Didn't go for very long. I thought it was the one band that had the most promise out of us. It was definitely the most competent musicians of bands I've been in. And then I joined a band down in Brighton with a member of Brat. Was our drummer, who's now the drummer of The Excerpts. I don't know if you've heard of that band.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
I'm quite a fan of those. They're Scottish, aren't they?
Yeah, so the lead singer's Scottish, and Tom, who's the drummer, who was the drummer in the band that I was in down in Brighton
Oh, wow.
with Neil. He's in the excerpts.
Oh, wow.
So they're doing, you know,
They're doing really well.
Well established and stuff. But yeah, that was it pretty much. That was kind of the last band that I was actually in, and we had a couple of reunion shows within Kick Out many years later for like a friend's 30th and stuff like that.
Nice.
And that's been it pretty much. You know, I haven't done anything else. I still like to write. I still got the equipment and like to put stuff together. But that's it pretty much. You know, it's. But now I think during this whole lockdown and stuff, it's given me more cause
time to reflect,
to want to start something again.
Yeah.
Because now I've seen so many people that I know who stopped doing music are now starting up again, and it gives you it's quite inspiring. So definitely, like, you know, I'm working on something at the moment, but I'll keep that one stum until we've got something to
definitely.
I mean, for me, music has always been since I was 15. I've been playing Derek guitars in bands, and kind of this year has definitely taught me not to take it for granted. Definitely in terms of, and I don't think I realized how much of a coping mechanism for most of the other things going on in my life playing in a band was. So when you don't realize until that actually that's taken away, how important that is and how it's part of your routine. I mean, with the wedding stuff, and then with obviously the tribute stuff, it's become a every week occurrence, and that was my night out effectively, you know. And I was very lucky to be able to go out and earn money and spend time with my friends instead of pissing up the wall. So it's become a I mean, for a lot of people, music is a way of life. It isn't a hobby a lot of the time. I don't think music's ever a hobby. It's a lifestyle. I think music, especially as a musician, it's not something that you can do it as a hobby. But if you're going to be in a band and you're going to do that kind of stuff, it's much more than that. It's something that you think about all the time. It's something that kind of you're always striving to improve. I mean, there's no such thing as your perfect rig setup is done. There is musicians, but always buying new stuff. like at the moment, we're looking to move into a bigger house. And the moment it's like, you're not buying any more guitars until we move. I'm like, really? She's like, we just haven't got any more room for guitars. Please don't buy any more. It was actually that one which tipped her over the edge. She was like, you do not need that.
I think one thing I'll take away from all of this is that I no longer say no to anything, because you just don't know when it's going to be the last time that you can do anything. And I'm also not putting myself under any pressure musically anymore, where I get so worked up about, it just has to be like a certain way. I've appreciated that now. It's all about having fun. And not to worry too much about what other people think about what you're doing, because most of the time, like you had said in the very first episode, Stefan, about like, you know, getting hung up on whether or not you make the mistakes and you know, that sort of thing. It's like now I just think anybody is just going to be happy just that they can get out and see something.
Absolutely. It's like a fresh start, isn't it?
Yeah, and if people don't like it, they don't like it. So what? Like, just go out and make something you like and have fun. And I think the people who have the most success are the people that have nailed that early on, you know, because they've just
absolutely
where they're not hung up on anything. They're just doing it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think no one ever thought that this, you know, the experience of playing live shows and even recording would ever be taken away from them. You know, as long as someone was fit and healthy, they would have expected to always do it. So yeah, you can never really predict what's going to happen. So, you know, then the next time you're on stage, Steve, and if you ever do Carl, and if I do myself, I think, you know, it's just going to be such.
We'll definitely come along. It's
going to be.
I can imagine it'd be quite.
It's going to be quite emotional.
Yeah, it will be emotional. Yeah, perfect, guys. Thank you ever so much for that.
Okay.
Cheers, guys. Bye.